Good morning, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the GBSN Cross-Border Coffee Break on Futures at the Narxoz Business School. We are very excited today. Narxoz is a brand new member, just joining in fall of last year. So today we have Dr. John A. Sweeney, who's the assistant professor at Narxoz Business School, and he's also the director of the Futures program.
Hi.
So just before we turn it over to Dr. Sweeney, I just wanted to give a little brief overview of GBSN for those of you who don't know about us. We're a network of business schools, a global network with 71 members in 40 countries. Our mission is to improve access to quality, locally relevant management education, and we do this by catalyzing our network. So we foster partnerships among members, we promote and advocate for best practice within business education, and we also administer capacity building programs in which we use our members to be consultants, advisors, and so on. If you'd like more information about membership and our activities, you can visit our website at gbsn.org. Just a little bit of administration. So throughout the webinar, you are muted. You won't be able to speak, but you can submit questions into the Q&A toolbar. And then at the very end of the webinar, we'll do a Q&A portion where all of your questions will be submitted into a queue. And I will read them out to Dr. Sweeney and he will answer them live. Following the webinar, we'll provide a Q&A report. So you will be able to access the questions and answers later. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Sweeney to kind of give a little bit of background about himself and go into his presentation.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Good morning, everyone, from a very snowy Almaty. My name is Dr. John Sweeney. I am an associate professor of Futures and Foresight at the Narxoz Business School, where we're also starting, and I'll serve as director for the Qazakh Research Institute for Future Studies. My work as a futurist has spanned 40 countries on 5 continents. I've worked for organizations like the UN, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, a variety of government innovation units, startups, Fortune 500s, and I also have a background in higher education. So I've had the chance to teach at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, which is where I received my PhD, and also at community colleges also on the island. Throughout my work as a futurist, I've had a chance to work with universities in a variety of countries to focus on future studies, strategic foresight, and how planning, policy, and strategy development processes can be a bit more forward-looking. So I wanted to give you a bit of overview on the presentation, and that's on the next slide. The first thing I wanted to discuss was to talk a little bit about the transformation at Narxoz. So Narxoz University and Narxoz Business School is going through a bit of a reboot. We are looking to reimagine the higher education landscape in Central Asia. And so there's an aggressive transformation that's going on in the university. I'm also going to provide then a quick introduction to future studies and foresight, which is a field that many people have heard about, but also within higher education is not as widely prevalent. And I'll talk a little bit more and focus on what futures will look like at the Narxoz Business School, provide an introduction to the Qazaq Research Institute for Future Studies, or QRIFs as we call it, and then we'll have a chance to go over some questions. So on the next slide, I thought the best way to actually talk about the transformation of Narxoz was to show you the transformation of Narxoz. So we have a really short video, and then I'll talk about some of the things that the university as a whole and that the Narxoz Business School will be doing to transform in the future. And hopefully we get the video to play.
Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm just having a little bit of technical difficulty.
No worries. While the video is loading, one of the things I can discuss is the opportunity for trilingual education. So within a few years, we'll have 60% of our courses at the overall university level will be in English. And we are going to focus on English, Kazakh, and Russian. And I think that's really going to distinguish us in the region in that there's a clear focus to make trilingual education a prominent aspect of the overall education space. Okay, I think the video maybe is ready.
It looks like the sound is not working. Can you hear anything?
I can't hear any audio, but I can certainly narrate a little bit. Okay. So one of the things that we are trying to make clear at Narxoz is that we want to bring an international experience to Almaty. So I'm actually one of the first of a number of international hires. We're going to increase international faculty. We're going to focus on international partnerships. And we want to make that international experience available to local students. And we think that a scaled approach to higher education is quite critical. So obviously we want to emphasize and focus on the local learning opportunities and how we can find learning within the community, how we can support that for local students. Obviously at the regional level, there's a fantastic opportunity to support higher education and certainly learning about business and future operational environments throughout Central Asia. And then we very much want to be a global leader in this space as well. So we want to bring in international students. And we think that scaled approach and that mix will lead to a successful transformation for Narxoz. We're building a new campus, so we're going to have a new look inside, a new look outside, and we think that the overall transformation of the university and the focus on innovative programs like future studies will position us to be a leader in the overall space. So I thought then, talking about the transformation of the university as a whole, we could spend a little bit more time to go into futures and foresight. So there are a number of disciplines that obviously look at the future, whether we're talking about management and the anticipation involved in decision-making. Certainly there are a variety of aspects and traditions throughout the business world around planning, around strategy, but future studies actually has quite an interesting history. So a lot of the future studies key ideas, the key approaches, the key methods were born from sort of military and planning and looking at how we can understand and make sense of operational environments. And ultimately, future studies is not about predicting the future. So in my work as a futurist, it's never about understanding exactly what's going to happen in the future. This is why it's always plural, futures studies. And so there are a variety of axioms, there are a variety of tools, there are a variety of methods and approaches, theories that ultimately are based around this very core idea, which is encapsulated in Dader's first law of the future. And that is the future cannot be predicted because the future does not exist. So there's always a plurality of possibilities, and being able to plan, being able to strategize, being able to have an organizational and institutional paradigm that is more agile, that is more anticipatory, is really at the core and the heart of that. So I have heard every crystal ball and fortune teller joke you can possibly imagine. And again, we are not doing prediction. We are doing a variety of forms of forecasting, but also creating learning cultures that can use the future to try to have better organizational efficiency, better sustainability, and to overall make the world a better place. So on the next slide, it's a little bit of an encapsulation of what our work as a futurist really is, and what is it exactly that we're trying to actually give to our students. I love this saying by Michel Foucault, and my PhD was actually within the Department of Political Science at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So we bring a political edge to the futures work that we do. And obviously it reinforces the first saying, which is you can't predict the future, so I'm no prophet. But I think the second aspect here is quite critical. My job as a futurist and the learning that we really want to give to our students is to be able to make windows where there were once walls. So how is it that we can see things differently? How is it that we can view the operational environment, view the business, view the context of society itself with a new lens, with a new angle, and try to find creative ways to support the skills and capacities that the employees of tomorrow are going to need to succeed. But also, what are the ideas, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges that tomorrow's entrepreneurs are going to meet? So we want to think about every scale. We know that the future of work and the landscape for how people think about themselves and their careers is completely shifting. And we want Narxoz to be well suited to that shifting future of work. If you're wondering what the image is here, it's my favorite image in the entire world. It's actually a customs form that the astronauts filled out when they came back from space. That might seem a little bit ridiculous and a little bit crazy. And the reason I use this form is it's a really good reminder from my perspective that oftentimes with hindsight, business as usual looks pretty ridiculous. So obviously someone at NASA said, well, you know, these astronauts left the country, so technically I suppose they should fill out a customs form. And what that often leads to is the breakdown of this kind of business as usual thinking. So obviously we want people to have moonshot ideas. We want to support radical visions of the future and how we can create them. But we also want to call into question the practices and the ideas and the paradigms that don't work anymore. So there's a balance within future studies, and our approach is very much going to be about how we can support critical, creative thought and these bold visions of the future and how we might achieve them. But it's also very much about making sure that the old, unsustainable paradigms are actually challenged and we find better ways of making a better future for businesses and a better future for the world. So on the next slide, I talk a little bit about then what exactly then is futures, how does Foresight kind of fit into the operational environment for businesses, what exactly is the perspective? Well, there are really two parts here. And I love this saying by a good colleague and friend, Ziauddin Sardar. It says that futures is the art of anticipation based on the science of exploration. So I'll focus on the second part first. Future studies is very much a discipline. It is taught in a variety of departments and places around the world. There are a number of universities in Europe, even business schools that offer this as different tracks within certain programs. And obviously there's a variety of tools, there's methods, there's academic journals, there are large conferences, there are organizations like the World Future Studies Federation or the Association of Professional Futurists. And so there very much is a robust space for learning and academic debate around these ideas. And then the first part is also quite critical, is that futures is very much a practice. So I've been a consultant for a number of years. I've worked with different organizations, different institutions. And we feel like this intersection of the two is precisely where the Narxoz Business School can provide an innovative educational experience for its students. So whether our students come in at the undergraduate level, whether they come in at the MBA or the DBA or the PhD level, we believe that a futures track and a Foresight specialization is going to benefit them in the business world. Because oftentimes changes happen so fast that actually people that are actually, experts within the space sometimes miss what's going to happen. So the image here is the classic Forbes magazine from November 2007. And as you can see, it says Nokia, 1 billion customers. Can anyone catch the cell phone king? Well, as we all know, in the summer of 2007 is when the first iPhone came out, and very rapidly, the entire market for smartphones and mobiles changed globally. And Nokia clearly lost its top position, and there was a complete shift within the landscape around the mobile industry. So again, I think the opportunity here is to be a bit more anticipatory, to be more forward-looking, and to give businesses the opportunities to meet the challenges and to go after the opportunities of the 21st century. So with that in mind, on the next slide, you get to see the motto for the Narxoz Business School. We are really focusing on having students create and design their own future. And that means they're going to need skills and capacities and learning opportunities that previous generations didn't have because of the complexity, because of the volatility, because of the uncertainty of the world, and the opportunity for them to try to then have and to take this into their careers. And again, to try to make the world a better place and obviously support successful businesses. So at Narxoz, what we're launching then on the next slide is an integrated program integrating futures and foresight into different programs. So there will be an undergraduate minor for students at the Narxoz Business School, where they'll have a chance to take courses in everything from introduction to futures thinking, which is more of like a general overview and a mindset course, to specializations in areas like scenarios, or even in games and simulations, which is one of my particular specializations. We then are offering this track or the opportunity to use this for our EMBA, our Executive MBA, our MBA program. So students can focus on a Foresight case study. They can actually focus on futures for their thesis option. And then for the DBA track, so there's a chance for students to come in and to do research within this area and to try to find a specialization for themselves. And certainly the EMBA, the MBA, and the DBA can actually prepare students for a career as a consulting futurist, or perhaps they're going to be working in an HR capacity within their organization, or perhaps they're even at the senior vice president or C-suite level, trying to create a more forward-looking culture and trying to have the organization shift its overall paradigm. And that's really at the heart of what we're doing with these programs, is trying to have an opportunity for organizations and institutions and businesses to really create a more sustainable, but also a more profitable and more efficient organization. And to be able to, again, I'm going to use the phrase, using the future, which is a way of thinking about the future as a resource. And so within all of these programs, our students will have a chance to work with myself and other faculty to try to create a real opportunity for change within their business and within the operational environment. And finally, the last thing we're going to focus on is then executive education. So we're already developing a variety of master classes and seminars and courses that focus in this area. Because Futures and Foresight is very much around continuity, but also change, it very much links up with a variety of other common approaches like design thinking or other more sort of innovation-based projects and programs. And so we're launching a series of new courses and seminars and master classes within executive education. On the next slide, I get to talk just briefly about something that I'm really excited about. So one of the things that I'll be doing is to help set up, but also to lead and direct the Qazaq Research Institute for Future Studies. Within Kazakhstan and within the broader region, this is one of the first institutions of a clear focus and mandate on future studies within a business school. So it's really exciting to be able to come into Kazakhstan, a place that I've worked in a little bit previously, and to build local capacity and to try to find a way to use the future at local, national, regional, and global scales. And so what the Research Institute allows us to do is to build international partnerships, to focus on collaborative research opportunities, but also to provide those opportunities with our students. So we will have a number of graduate research fellowships. We will have a number of international projects and programs, but also at the more local level, we're going to focus on a few different areas that will give students some really, I think, unique learning opportunities. So we're looking at everything from what is the education landscape within Kazakhstan. Obviously, the country is undergoing a lot of rapid changes. How is it going to shift? How is it going to transition into this new future of work? We also are even thinking at the city level. So Almaty is a beautiful city. It's got a rich history going all the way back to the Silk Road, but it's also really transitioning and becoming very much a global city. And I think the opportunity for students to contribute and work on a variety of projects is really quite rich. So we're really excited to be able to give those students the opportunities and to be able to have them really sort of frame what it is we want to do. Obviously, the name is a bit of a mouthful. So you can see on the next slide, we're trying to sort of bring it down a little bit. So we're going to call ourselves QRIFs. Our website is still very much in development. So there's a placeholder page up right now. But certainly if you come back in the future in the next few months, we'll have the site built out a little bit more and have a little bit more information. So on the next slide, I just wanted to give a bit of an overview about what it is that we're actually trying to do and our approach and our language to that. When we were thinking about how we would frame QRIFs as an organization, as an institution within the region, obviously there's been a lot of focus on multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary approaches. And actually at Narxoz, we're going to go away from the department structure. We want students to have integrated learning experiences. So we thought a better word would actually be that we are an indisciplinary research-based and practice-driven learning lab. And so the idea of being indisciplinary is that, of course, we're going to break some rules along the way. We obviously want to use best practice, but we also want to challenge the assumptions, and we want to actually challenge a lot of the practices that perhaps even haven't even produced results. And again, finding a balance between research and practice So we very much want things to be theory driven, but we also realize that innovation sometimes requires new thinking, sometimes requires us to prototype and to iterate. And that's why we're going to very much have a lab approach to our projects. We obviously then want to further future studies and strategic foresight very much across Kazakhstan. Obviously, we've had a variety of consulting organizations come in and use these different practices, whether it's with the government or businesses, but we think within higher education landscape and certainly within business education that we have a unique offering and that there's a real opportunity to create this as a space of learning. First within Kazakhstan, next within Central Asia, and then to be a global leader and to position ourselves amongst the top universities in the world that offer futures and foresight. So on the next slide, I want to just go through the next three slides actually to talk a little about how we're going to position ourselves and what is really then driving this and what's at the heart of our approach. So rather than have a very clear vision statement, rather than having a clear mission, we thought it was best actually to focus on values. So what are the values that are driving QRIFs, and what are the values that are really underlying our capacity and our ability and our desire and our passion to have futures spread across the region. The first is curiosity. We want to be a space where people can come in and be curious, where they can ask interesting, bold, sometimes even ridiculous seeming questions, and that they can actually begin to think about exploring those and then leave with the sense of curiosity as well. There have been a variety of studies that show that actually curiosity is a value that companies want in their employees. And we think that this openness, this sort of focus on questioning is really going to be quite critical now, and certainly will be a skill further into the future. If we go to the next slide, you can see the next value is commensality. This is a bit of an uncommon term, but the idea here and the basic meaning is that we have this approach of building relationships where we sit down and, as the saying goes, we break bread with people. So to build relationships that are based on actual, face-to-face meetings, to have a sense that we're sharing a table with people, we obviously want to build on the local traditions and the local customs, which very much have a lot to do with having personal relations, having personal connections, but also to try to have a sense that our relationships are really forged through meaningful collaborations. And so all the collaborators and partners that we work with, we very much want to have the capacity to obviously use all of the tools that are available to us. So that's a number of digital tools, but also really to share air with people. We really want to be an open space. So the Institute will actually be open on campus. Students can come, international partners can come at any time. We want to be a place to host people and to really be open to the world, but also very much to, again, have it be a space that's open to the local community as well. And finally, the last value that's going to drive our work and that we hope to have instilled in our students is a heightened sense of contextuality. So one of the clear challenges of doing futures and foresight work, and given that I've had a chance to work in a variety of contexts, is we don't want to take something that's worked in one place and to simply try to force it on another. So how is it that we can attune ourselves to the local context? How is it that we can understand the highly local in relation to the truly global? And how can we bring that perspective to bear on our work? And how can we make sure that everything that we do is within a particular context and is attentive to that context, and that we are being inclusive and that we are open to a variety of perspectives and challenging ourselves to learn throughout the processes and projects that we undertake. And so I think for me, and I think for the others who have started to come on at the Institute, contextuality is very much about a learning process. It is very much about openness, and it's going to drive our work. And we really want our students to leave with that sensibility as well. And ultimately, when we think about meeting the challenges of something as extreme and as dynamic and as truly global as climate change, it's going to require all of these. It's going to require a sense of curiosity. It's going to require a sense of connectivity, this commensality, this openness, and it's certainly going to necessitate a sense of contextuality. So we think all of these together are quite critical and important and are really going to drive our work. The last thing that I'd like to leave you with is the second law of the future, which I think really encapsulates a lot of the work that we're going to do. And this is also, I think, one of my favorite sayings in the field overall. And the person mentioned here, Jim Dater, was actually a professor at the University of Hawaii at Manova for over 40 years, and he was actually my dissertation advisor. And so the idea is that, well, if we think the world is actually changing, if we think that novelty is actually increasing in many ways, then any useful idea about the future should appear to be ridiculous. And as an American, I think we don't have to go very far back to think that actually the idea of Donald Trump as president would have seemed ridiculous to a number of people. And yet here we are in this space. So again, what we believe is quite important and critical in providing business education and business learning for our students is the opportunity and the necessity of calling into question the assumptions that we have, of really challenging business as usual thinking, and of really finding ways of creating a creative learning space. As you can see, there's a little asterisk at the bottom there. So any useful idea about the future should appear to be ridiculous, but not all ridiculous ideas are useful. And again, this goes back to the idea that futures is very much an art, but also very much a science. And we want to blend the two at Narxoz. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk a little about what we're doing. And as you can see on the next slide, we are going to very much have a trilingual focus. So I'm committing to learning Kazakh. So if I hope to have the chance to share in the future, I hope my Kazakh will be a little bit better. But Rahmet, spasiba, and thank you so much. And I look forward to your questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Sweeney. So I'm just looking through some of the questions. Okay, first one. Hi, thank you for your presentation. I'm from Kenya. How will you find collaborative research projects with other universities, and who will fund such collaborative research projects for your students?
That's a really great question. I've been very fortunate over the number of years to build a variety of relationships with different universities. So I also serve as a fellow for the executive education program at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore. And so again, I initially will be using my international network and the international network of our faculty and administration. But we are very much open. So through organizations also like GBSN, we are excited and also open to explore those partnerships. Finding funding is something that is a challenge for everyone everywhere. But actually there are really interesting opportunities now to fund innovative educational and research-based projects and programs, certainly that are looking at doing things a little bit differently. So the landscape actually for funding within future studies and Foresight is, I think, actually a bit better than maybe some other areas and disciplines. And we're looking at a variety of organizations. So I've got a few proposals already out. We will be looking at directly working with organizations, let's say, for example, like the World Bank, but also pursuing different research grants. So looking at working with partners, let's say in Europe, there's large research funding for projects around what's called Horizon 2020. So thinking about using innovative approaches and challenging norms and assumptions around the future. So again, our hope is that through my international network, but also through the networks of our faculty and our administration, that initially we can provide seed funding for a variety of projects and programs and to make QRIFs truly sustainable within a few years. But we're also very much open to working with different partners on a variety of even smaller scale projects that could lead to larger scale projects through organizations like GBSN. So I would love to explore any and all collaborations through this network.
Okay. Oh, can you go in a little more detail about the types of innovative tools and what your learning environment looks like at the center? Sorry, it looks like it's chopped up. So I guess what sort of resources you're providing at the center to make an innovative learning environment?
Yes, so one of the things that we're going to focus on is how do we use games and simulations in a variety of environments, in a variety of contexts, for not just learning in the classroom, but also how students could take this and use this for, let's say, a thesis project, how they could use this as a tool or a skill within their everyday sort of, business environment, and to use it also as a skill or a tool or a capacity for thinking differently about the future or changing the organizational paradigm. So lots of interesting studies have come out recently about the effectiveness and the efficiency and the utility of games. What is it that they're good at? What is it they're not good at? So we really want to provide rigorous training and a very much a theory-driven approach to using these methods and tools. And the center and our work essentially will be focused on how we can bring and adapt these into different contexts. So gaming and simulations is very much going to be one area that we would like to focus on. And we think that actually there's an opportunity for students to take this into their work and to continue to use these. Another is to try to challenge ourselves to think about what online tools, what digital spaces are available. So obviously we've seen social media completely transform the higher education landscape. It simply doesn't work now if a university doesn't have an Instagram page or a Twitter feed. So what is the next generation of social media and connection technologies going to be, and how can we prepare for them? So in my past work, I've had a chance to experiment with technologies like mobile augmented reality. Obviously, we're seeing a variety of improvements even within virtual reality as well. So how can we start to think about using and integrating these technologies, which are obviously being used in lots of corporate environments for things like trainings, but also, different kinds of events around maybe even like strategy or planning, and to continue to be at the forefront of thinking about what is the next generation of these technologies. How are they going to be further integrated in not just the sort of operational environment, but also within the broader business landscape? So that's just two examples of areas that we'll have a chance to focus on, and how we can consider, again, more innovative approaches and tools and methods, and what their application could be in, again, not just the operational environment, but also the business, specifically the business context.
Thank you. Angela Chancho from Georgetown is asking, sorry if I joined a little bit late, sorry if you answered this. What types of partnerships are you creating with organizations for the program? What does it look like?
Yeah, so there are different levels, I guess you could say, of partnerships. Obviously, we have partners that we would pursue joint research with. And that could very much be, let's say, a smaller scale project that we're looking to do something on, let's say, a semester basis, maybe a year-long project. I currently have a proposal in with a project, a collaborative project with the university in Korea. And that would be essentially a multi-year project looking at what digitalization is going to do in a country in Southeast Asia. And this is funded by an international agency. So again, different scales of projects. Potentially, we even have an MOU where we could do, let's say, a student exchange or a faculty exchange. Because Futures is so new at Narxoz and so new within the region, we are open to a variety of partnerships at different scales, partnerships of different scope, that allow us to learn from different organizations, including those who have been successful using these approaches, but also those where these approaches are new, to exchange faculty, to exchange students, and to try to find ways of then sort of, again, spreading sort of futures. So we think there is a rich opportunity to forge a variety of different levels and kinds of partnerships. And we're open to pursuing different collaborations with partners around the world. From
Jaya, your fellow neighbor from APA. The context of futures pretty much goes back to the earlier idea of incubator, where ideas forward-looking, strategy and space for incubating ideas is critical and crucial for learning and development. I guess it's a comment, not so much a question. And I have another comment, not so much a question, from Daniel Zaretsky. He is an American who works in Kyrgyzstan in the 90s and is currently based in Tajikistan. Moving to Uzbekistan, the team he works with created what they wanted to call the Ministry of the Future and is now the Ministry of Innovative Development in Uzbekistan. We have a proposal on the President's desk for a national online affordable university to be called University of the Future. Instruction will be trilingual. Briefly met with your rector. He looks forward to being in touch, so asking for your contact details. Sorry, I didn't need to read that all out loud. Thank you, Daniel, for your—
No, that's okay.
I will share your contact information with Dr. Sweeney so you guys can connect.
Would love to be in touch. And I can respond a little bit to the first comment as well. So there is very much a connection between the idea of, how do you seed a new business venture? What is needed for entrepreneurship? How can ideas be incubated? And sort of, processes that obviously are being more anticipatory. So there is a lot of connectivity within the overall kind of education space about how futures can be used for innovation.
And I think that is our last, that's our last question. So thank you so much, Dr. Sweeney, for your presentation. For those of you who joined a little bit late, the presentation is being recorded, so I will be posting it to the GBSN YouTube channel, as well as the website following this webinar. You will receive an email from me that includes the link to the video, his PowerPoint presentation, as well as all the questions and answers in a Word document. And if you'd like to be in touch with Dr. Sweeney, you can just send me an email directly and I can connect you guys via email and share your contact with him. So thank you so much. And, GBSN does these cross-border coffee breaks quite often. So stay tuned for the next one. I know Narxoz will be doing plenty as they've got a lot of new activities and opportunities coming up. So stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you to GBSN. Look forward to staying in touch and connected with everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Good morning.
Bye.